of Muskoka Lakes. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 9:03. Seeing no problem with that, we're going to move on to confirming that the members are present, and we do have quorum. As I say, we are awaiting Councillor Nishikawa, and Councillor Jaglowitz will not be in attendance today. I will confirm that the CAO clerk and members of the senior management team and staff are present, and advise that the public input on the agenda was invited at the following email address: tmlpubliccomment@Muskoka Lake.
We've hit mute, Councillor Zavitz. We've hit mute on your phone.
I don't know how that happened. I didn't get to that. A YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. There is no supplementary agenda today, and I would ask any committee members for any disclosures of pecuniary interests. Okay, seeing none, I will mention that the motions have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite this meeting. And in terms of voting, members shall physically raise their hand until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded by the clerk. This is not considered a recorded vote. Okay, given that, sorry? Yes, so we're going to have just do a minor change to the agenda that's in front of you today. 6A, item 6A, if you will, which is a report from Land and Agreements Coordinator involving the license agreement application for Longview Investments Limited Roll 9-14-073-01. I'll ask for that report first, as both delegations, Mr. Longo of Airden Burles and Paul Rabinovitch of HGR Graham Partners, are both here representing the advocate in this application, if you will. So I think with that, I would turn the mic over to our corporate services coordinator for the report, please. Thank you. Oh, sorry. That'll be Cheryl Mortimer, clerk. Thank you.
Good morning. We have received an application for some encroachments on a road allowance that is leading to water. The application report is in your package, and based on staff comments, it is recommended that the encroachments be removed from the subject road allowance. We have two delegates here to speak today on the matter, and so I will turn it back to the chair.
Good, thank you. Okay, with that, I will introduce our first delegate, Mr. Leo Longo of Airden Burles LLP. He's an agent for the applicant, item 6A license agreement application. Mr. Longo, are you here? There you are, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm representing Longview Investments Limited, the owner of the property. The property is owned by Mr. Hy Ackerman. He recently, for estate purposes, put his property cottage into a corporate name, and that's who I'm representing. Mr. Chairman and committee members, today I'm asking for a deferral of this matter for three reasons, which I can briefly set out. The first is our desire to have a discussion with staff about this brief comment that they've placed in their report, suggesting that this license application be denied. We filed this application 8 weeks ago, only received the report Friday afternoon, and saw the comments from staff, one of them being, you can remove the sewer line that is slightly encroaching on the property at minimal cost. Our client thinks otherwise and is actually engaging a consulting engineer to address the very comment that is in the staff report. So this staff report hit us like a ton of bricks. No one had called us before to say, Mr. Longo, we think there's an issue with your application. We'd like the opportunity to engage with staff, to retain the necessary consultant, to specifically address a comment that staff made in their report. And the fact that 2 staff members have indicated these minor encroachments ought not to be on this road allowance, I simply point out that in 2005, my client made a minor variance application for something on his property. And Mr. Pink at the time, in 2005, reported to the Committee of Adjustment as follows. The minutes disclose that, quote, staff have noted that the subject road allowance is heavily treed and the property slopes steeply down to the lake. Due to its steepness, the road allowance would unlikely be used for public purposes. So staff have in the past acknowledged this road allowance has the likelihood has no public use. And yet now we have this staff report suggesting perhaps otherwise and why this license should be denied. So that's point number 1. We'd like to retain a consultant. We'd like to discuss this with staff. Point number 2 for the deferral, when the agenda came out and I saw that the next door neighbor who's on the other side of the road allowance would be sending his lawyer, I contacted that lawyer on Monday, suggested, could we please defer this matter? You and I speak, have our neighbors speak, our clients speak to each other and address not only what this application is about, but if there are any other concerns your client has. Mr. Longo, I'll get back to you. He called me back later that day saying, my client does not want to speak with you prior to Wednesday's meeting, and he wants Wednesday's meeting to go ahead. I inquired, could you please tell me what the concern is about the application that's before the committee? I can't disclose that and won't, and we'll just deal with this on Wednesday. I think the more appropriate way of dealing neighbor to neighbor is that way. And I think rather than wasting the time of this committee, those discussions should occur. So that's the second reason I'm asking for a deferral. I would like to have that opportunity to speak with the neighbor subsequent to this meeting. The third reason, and perhaps the most important reason, is that the public interest is not prejudiced in any way by a deferral being granted. These 3 encroachments that are on the road allowance have been there for 4 decades, to my knowledge, without any complaint from the public. And it would be simply maintaining the status quo for a little while longer to allow for these discussions to take place. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman and committee members, my client is desirous of ensuring that what is on his property complies with municipal rules. He applied for and has obtained minor variances in 2005 and 2016. He also has a site plan agreement dealing with this property. He has shown a willingness to work, and where corrections are required or approvals necessary, he has sought and obtained those. We realized that these 3 encroachments were something that was hanging out there that had never been yet addressed. If you look at the map, you'll see they are only minorly encroaching into the road allowance, and one which your staff have already noted in the past on other applications for our client is heavily treed, heavily sloped, not used by the public, and likely never will be. So with those submissions, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask for a deferral of this matter to be brought back on when I've had that opportunity to meet with staff, engage with the engineer, and meet with the neighbor. I'm hoping that isn't a long deferral, but it should just be a sine die, and we'll just contact Ms. Mortimer to get this back on committee. One final request. I don't know what the next deputant is going to say. They know what our application is and they've seen the staff report. If I may ask for a brief opportunity to reply should the need arise to what I hear from Mr. Rabinovitch, who next speaks. Thank you very much, and I trust the committee will permit this matter to be deferred for those discussions to take place. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Longo. You certainly have my interest. I might say now that we would ask you just to hang there, and we'll listen to Mr. Paul Rabinovitch speak in terms of the neighbor, and then I certainly will allow you, sir, time for if there is, I wouldn't want to call it a rebuttal, but certainly a comment should it be required. So, Mr. Rabinovitch, you have the floor, sir. You're there. I see you. Welcome. Okay, so Mr. Rabinovitch has a presentation that we will be showing on the screen. That could just take a second.
Good morning. Apologies, I was just let in. I'm not sure. Are you ready for me to speak now?
Yes, we are, sir. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, Mayor Harding, members of council and staff. My name is Paul Rabinovitch and I represent Geoffrey and Ann Gouinlock. So what I'd like to do is, you've got the first slide up, so I'd like to just give a brief presentation on the proposed license application by Mr. Ackerman, which is also known as Longview Investments Limited. I'm aware that the staff recommendations attached to the agenda for this meeting are aligned with the Gouinlock's proposal, and we fully endorse the entirety of the staff recommendations. You can go with slide 2 now. Thank you. So just briefly, the Gouinlocks and Mr. Ackerman own adjacent properties with an unopened original road allowance, which is 66 feet wide, running between them, which runs in a north-south direction down to Lake Muskoka. Okay, slide 3, please. In 2020, Mr. Ackerman built an illegal gravel road on the unopened road allowance, excuse me, without seeking approval from the township. And the construction of this illegal road caused significant damage to the unopened original road allowance, including cutting mature trees and shrubs, scraping the earth down to bedrock, moving boulders, and laying gravel, and which will be illustrated by the pictures I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes. Slide 4, please. Okay, this slide uses a site plan drawing that was completed by Mr. Ackerman and provided to my clients in the past, and we have drawn on it the illegal road on the unopened road allowance, and we've just drawn it to the best of our knowledge approximately, but it's sort of center and center left of the on the road allowance itself. And it's Mr. Ackerman had this site plan long before he built this road, so he should have and would have had to know that he was building this road without a permit on the unopened road allowance, which is township property. Now, in addition here, I'm going to refer to the picture. So you see on the left side, it has picture 1 from the bottom up to the top, picture 6, and their orientation. So I'm going to refer back to this, but you won't see this one again unless you want to flip back to it. And you'll see from the pictures that the construction of this road was no small undertaking. It looks like it required large earth-moving machinery constructed, and it was all completed without permission of the township on the township property. Okay, slide 5. Okay, so this is picture number 1 on the site plan. This is looking north away from the lake. At the newly constructed road, you can see there's on the sort of far top left, large boulders, which are shoring up the roadbed due to the angle of the hillside. And you can see that, it's a significant construction incursion into the original forest. Okay, now picture number 2. This is also looking north now. I don't know, my view is blocked by my pictures. Not sure if yours is. So on the right-hand side is the road itself. And you can see where there's, again, boulders holding it up and significant amounts of gravel put in place. So hopefully your pictures aren't blocking the view that I have. We'll go to slide number, picture number 3. And this is looking this is looking east, I should say, towards the new deck that I understand was built in 2020 without a permit. And then go to slide number 4, or picture number 4. Okay, so this slide is looking south towards Lake Muskoka. Now in the front bottom, you'll see a round sort of disc. That's actually the stump of a tree that had been cut. There's potentially other trees cut, but that one is clear in this picture. On the far sort of top right, again, you can see where the top edge of the road where it's been shored up because of the hillside that it was built on, and the significant amount of gravel that's been placed there. And then you can see towards the end, there's some red chairs. So been a sitting spot built on the road allowance as well. And this goes all the way down to roughly within 50 feet of the waterfront. The Ackerman's cottage is maybe between 80 and 100 feet from the waterfront, and this road goes down to close to almost 50 feet. You can see that it's a full-blown gravel road. It's not a cottage walking path, and heads right down towards the lake. And then you can go to picture number 5. This is looking south at the back of Mr. Ackerman's cottage, and the new road is covered in leaves in this picture, but it gives you a sense of the width, and it's sort of the center of the leaf section is the road itself. And then picture number 6. Okay, this is looking southwest toward the lake by Mr. Ackerman's garage. So the building you see here is his garage, his cottages. I think you can see the roof of his cottage in the background. And you'll see in the forefront of this picture is the road. Just behind the road appears to be a dirt or graveled area, and then his gravel driveway. You can see the corner by the front of the garage, but the roadway is in the front here. And you can see from this picture that the road that was illegally built seems to be at least as good or better quality than his actual driveway. And it's not a path; it's a road. And as I said, so it took significant construction to build it, and it has had a significant effect on the original natural features of the road allowance. Okay, next slide. Okay, just brief history. I'm not going to read the slide. This gives a brief history of some of the past actions of Mr. Ackerman and prior cutting on the unopened road allowance without permission. And as well, it just mentions that he had advised the Gouinlocks in the past that he wouldn't build further westward towards their property, but the road incurs, completely to the west side of his property in the road allowance. And just to clarify that the issue of the construction of this new illegal road only came to light when the township became aware of it. And he had not come to the township to ask permission to build it or to obtain any, well, there would have been a permit, but obtain any permission to build it. Next slide is slide number 12. And the last slide. So this just sets out our proposed remedies, which align with the township recommendations in the township report, which again, we fully endorse. And this slide sets out more details on the types of rehabilitation and remediation that we are requesting and feel is appropriate to restore the road allowance to as close to its original natural state as possible. In addition to what the township had set out, this mentions that in order to protect the township and the road allowance for the future, it'd be beneficial to enshrine this protection in an amendment to the Ackerman Site Plan Control Agreement, because they currently have a site plan agreement registered on title, and it could easily be dealt with in that site, in an amendment to that site plan agreement, so it is clear to anybody acquiring his property in the future that, you know, the road allowance is sacrosanct and, you know, isn't to be touched if council so agrees. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, Mr. Rabinovitch, thank you so much for your presentation. Is there anyone else, I would ask now, is there anyone else here in favor, in support of, or against this proposal? I don't believe there is. Okay, so before, to both of the lawyers, if you would just hang tight, and we'll ask committee any thoughts, observations, comments as to the documents and the comments you see in front of you. Mr. Longo, I'll have you hold your comments until we hear from committee, if you would, please. Thank you. Mayor Harding.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd actually love to see Mr. Rabinovich's copy of the site plan again. I think that's interesting. And maybe we can put that back up on the screen quickly, but I'll go to staff perspective on this one right now. We want more than, you know, the photos that we see in the staff report show to me just a sewage line, it looks like, that doesn't seem to be very obtrusive. But when I see a cart path or a road constructed, I do see that, and I would 100% agree that that needs to be removed. We're not opening that up. We're not expanding the property of the applicant. And there's lots of room if he wants to do a path on the other side of his property. So I guess I'm in support of it, but have we requested, is this to remove the path as well? In particular, we want everything gone from this property to staff?
Well, sorry, maybe staff, go ahead. Who's there? Well, okay, so our clerk could speak to that. Cheryl?
Yeah, sorry. And we just received, or I just became aware of the path just recently, so we included it as part of the items to be removed in the motion.
Okay, Chair Zavitz, just a supplemental, if I may, to Mr. Longo specifically. And just, you talk about your client, the reason we would never open this is the road allowance is too steep leading to water, but it appears it's built a path on the road leading to water. So it's a little bit counter to what you're suggesting.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Your Worship. A couple of things. First of all, I would just note that staff added the request for the path in this application. This application does not deal with that path. In fact, I was unaware of that path when the application was filed. The application before you is just for that narrow area by the cottage in the by the road allowance. This path that has been created is the precise reason why I think a deferral should occur. Now that I've heard what my friend's comments have been, I quite frankly like to contest one or two of them, but I think the better way is for the neighbors to talk about that. If a road has been, if a pathway has been built as suggested and improperly done, I suspect our client will need to do the restoration or seek the approval for that. That's not what the application before you today is. It's just for these three minor points of the stairway encroaching, a stone path at the foot of the stairway, and the pipe. If the path is now part of this matter and is going to be considered by the council, I'd like the opportunity to address it, because my application doesn't address it at all. So hence the deferral. On the point specifically, while a path was built there, I don't know what the slope of that path is, and it clearly appears to just run around the cottage where the, run along the road allowance where the cottage is. This length of road, Your Worship, goes back quite far through wetlands and other areas before you get to where the public area is accessible. And so I think I just go with what staff said in 2005, that this is likely not to ever be used for the public use. This is the private cottager. I'd like the opportunity to address this with my client, address it with the neighbors, and then once informed, address it with you. Thank you.
Both groups are represented by lawyers, speaks volumes for further negotiation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to other committee members. I see Councillor Nishikawa, then Councillor Roberts, then Kelly.
Thank you. I didn't want to debate the application at this time. I wanted to just speak on the deferral request. And I believe that we should move forward with the deferral. However, I'm concerned that I don't feel I'm looking at a deferral so that the neighbors can have discussions. I don't want to put the neighbors in that position. I think they've made their position quite clear by having their representatives come today. But I do feel that in order for this committee to look at this application in a full manner, we should allow the applicant's agent a deferral at this time and actually not debate any further on the application.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I support what my Councillor Nishikawa has proposed, but I'd like to make a few comments. I don't think the applicant should be talking to the neighbor. The neighbor has just brought it to the attention of the township. The direct neighbor to this property is the township. So anything to be done is with the township, not with the neighbor. The neighbor can't give you anything. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, in 2005, we didn't think we were going to be building multi-million dollars on properties that we couldn't get access to. Today, we're building numerous. So the technology has changed. So that to say within 50 years, we wouldn't want to use that road allowance in some way, we can't tell. It's just not our practice to give up road allowances to water. So I support the deferral, and I will have other input to that once I know more from once the property owner, the township, has talked to the applicant and to see how we move forward. Then I'll comment further. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee member Kelly, please.
Thank you, and through you, I just basically an echo. I support the deferral, not to allow neighbors to talk to neighbors, because quite frankly, I don't see anything here that the neighbors can resolve. I support the deferral so that staff can make certain that we've covered everything through the full length of the road allowance, full length of the encroachment, and make sure that we're covering it all at once rather than coming back in bits and parts. So if there's a need for a discussion, it's with the township. And if there's the need for a deferral, it's not to allow two other parties to talk, but to make sure that we've looked at this in its entirety and are proposing a remedy that covers the entire problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I call on Councillor Bridgman, you put your hand down. But listen, before I call on you and Councillor Edwards, I would ask of staff to speak to Councillor Kelly's comment. Is staff, I mean, this is going to sound bizarre, but are we convinced? I mean, really what I'm hearing from some of the committee members saying, let's go back to staff and ask them, if this is real. But, I think that our staff was looking at a staff report that includes sewer line, stairway, landing, stone walkway, and path. This is clearly us saying these are all in contravention of on the township lands, if you will. So can I ask of staff, I mean, is anything to be accomplished by a deferral where staff looks at this again? I mean, it seems that we've looked at it. That's why it's in front of this committee right now. So could someone, David Pink, I wonder if you could speak to that. Is that David, Ken, or Ken Becking, if you're there? Oh, okay, there's David. Thank you, David.
Morning, committee. Thank you, Chair Zavitz. Certainly we're at the direction of committee. If you wish staff to re-examine the situation, I'm happy to have a further look and discuss with the applicants as well and the neighboring property owner, if that's the direction of committee.
Well, I guess this is committee, if I might, to you, asking you, how do I even say this? I mean, the homework's been done. It's a document. It's sitting here in front of us. It's very clear to me that there are contraventions. I'm wondering what would be accomplished by us putting it aside and coming back. What will we discover in addition to? I believe you've done your homework, sir.
Thank you. That's correct. I mean, I'm certainly always open to listening to the comments of the property owner or the neighboring property owner. However, I have been generally involved with this property over the years, and there seems to be continuous encroachment onto this road allowance. There doesn't appear to be any hardship, as we noted in the report. These are all sort of, the term eludes me, but sort of features that they're expanding onto this road allowance that I believe can be corrected. They don't require to be placed there. Whether the road allowance has a future use or not, we believe it should be removed from the road allowance.
Good, thank you. And to Director of Public Works, Ken Becking, I might ask you, sir, any thoughts on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with Mr. Pink. The facts of the matter are clear. Ackerman has constructed works on property that he did not own. Full stop. The Municipal Act provides that while the road allowance can be accessed by the public does not have the right to alter that in order to suit their purposes. In this matter, I'm not sure that a deferral really achieves much of anything.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate both of your commentary. I'm going to go to Councillor Bridgman, then Roberts, then Mazan, and then the mayor.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. A bit of a clarification here. Is that complete pathway part of this motion now, and can we vote on that today? And it's not an issue? I just need that clarified because that's what Councillor Kelly was alluding to. Have we got it all in this motion? Because if we do, I don't see a deferral. So maybe somebody can just.
The answer is I have a resolution in front of me that includes the sewer line, the stairway, the landing, the stone walkway, and path. And just for clarification, I believe the path has also been referred to as a road.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
Whatever. Okay. So,
thank you. Then I don't support a deferral.
All right. Thank you for that. I am going to call on Councillor Edwards. Sorry.
Thank you very much. On page 10, it says all of just what was mentioned, that path, it can be called a road or anything. Everything was mentioned, everything was documented. I have seen the property. I'm not in support of it. And that I would just as soon vote on it today.
Good, thank
you.
I
will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts, then Mazan, then Nishikawa, and then the mayor.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak a second time. Now that I understand that everything is included and what you had asked staff, I would like to add one other thing. If we do so elect to ask the Ackermans to remove the encroachment of the path, that like we do in other planning matters, is that we have, and I know they do not own the property, but I want to ensure that for at least for the next 5 or 6 years, that they are charged with the responsibility to ensure that any plantings they put in place are nurtured and that they thrive, or if not, they again replace it at their expense. Thank you.
Thank you, and I might share that the last few words in the resolution are to be put back to its natural state at no cost to the township. So,
Sorry, Chair, just sorry to interrupt, but I would like to have that for an extended period of time, because what I have seen is they do this and then they put cedar trees in and the deers eat them.
okay,
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting you.
that's fine. Thank you, and Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you, I just wanted to add my support of your comments, Chair Zavitz. I'd like to recommend that we follow staff's recommendation in this. This is township property, and I think we should just be moving forward today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I am concerned. I'm concerned about the township's legal bill. Number one. And so therefore, when an applicant requests a deferral and feels that they have an opportunity to bring information forward that may have some implication to his applicant, good or bad, I believe that our municipality should respect that request for deferral. And I'm very aware that we are not lawyers. I'm aware that there's all these little things reasonings and things that could result in additional costs to our municipality. And I'm trying to avoid that. I have a lot of respect for both lawyers who have been in front of our council in the past. But I also know your strengths. So I'm suggesting that council follows the request for a deferral.
Good, and thank you for that. I just might ask before I call on our last two committee members, again, one of staff, I suppose, David, has this passed the township's scrutiny legally? I mean, essentially, that's what Councillor Nishikawa is asking. Are we putting our township in jeopardy by ruling either way on this? So I might ask that. David?
Thank you, Chair. Not sure if I'm qualified to give committee legal advice. However, I think generally speaking, I would suspect you're within your rights to require removal of structures placed on your property without your permission. But again, I'm not a licensed listener.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to call on Councillor Hayes and then the mayor.
Thank you. Through you, I really have no problem with having a deferral for this, but could we change the recommendation to include all encroachments? Because it appeared that we missed the path on the first go round, and there may be other encroachments that we are not aware of. So basically, we would be requesting that any and all encroachments be removed and rehabilitated.
Thank you. I'm just going to call on Cheryl Mortimer, our clerk, to clarify.
The application was made for the, just have to get the report here 1 second. The application was made without the path, roadway, whichever it is that you want to call it. However, it was brought to our attention. So I noted in the staff report that we also are aware now of a path that was constructed. So staff included that as one of the requirements of removal from the road allowance. So that is why the path is included in the staff report. Mr. Longo is correct. That was not part of the application, but we are aware of it now. And so we are including it as part of the resolution as it is municipal land.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to have the opportunity to address that path that's been added.
Okay, Mr. Longo, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll call on the Mayor Harding for the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Councillor Nishikawa. In this particular case, we have an application for license of agreement. Our staff have said no. which is great. And I don't believe we're going to change our staff's recommendation. We're not asking staff at this point to do any more work. But the applicant has said, hey, give me 30 days. Give me a pause. Let me talk. Let me argue. Let me figure out everything involved. And I don't think there's any harm in us doing that to bring this back. We're not, again, asking for any more staff time or energy to be put into this. I think it is a due process to just take a brief pause and allow Mr. Longo and his clients to address all the issues specifically. I may or may not change our outcome going forward. It's another agenda item as a repeat. We don't need the whole background. We don't need Mr. Longo to debate for 20 minutes as to why such and such at this particular point. We're going to move forward. But I do believe we owe it to the applicant who's asked a question of this council to just put a pause. Again, it's been there for 40 years. Maybe the path has been there for a year. So I'm okay with that. Just be perspective. I will not, if the question of can we defer, I will be supporting that.
Thank you. Just for purposes of my interest, Mayor, what question is it that they've asked that hasn't yet been answered in your mind?
Mr. Longo, in my opinion, has asked for a deferral. He wants to understand the cost implications. Our staff have said it's minor to remove the encroachments. He's objected to that, whether he wants to get an estimate or not. There's obviously, now that the path has been added, there's going to be significant cost. I don't really care personally about the significant cost of removing the path. If a path was built on a road allowance illegally, it's going to have to be removed. So I'm just, again, 30 days to come back and let them do whatever, to me, is not a specific issue at this particular point.
Your worship, can I?
No, if I might just right now, we'll just stick with the committee. Thank you. Councillor Bridgman and then Councillor Edwards.
Actually, Councillors, Chair Zavitz, I would like to hear what Mr. I'm sorry, I didn't get your whole last name.
Rabinovitch, yeah, okay.
It has to say, if we could have that, please.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Two clarifications. One, I wasn't.
Paul, I would like to hear from Councillor Edwards, and then I'll ask you to.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If the committee want to defer this for 30 days, I can go with that, but it's not going to change my mind. The staff report is in. I don't want them to spend any more time on it. And that I'd like to see everything removed. I'm like the mayor. And that I don't care what it costs them, and that it's on our property. It's they've never had actual approval for it, so we want to wait 30 days, and that's fine. I don't think I'll change my mind on it, and I hope staff doesn't change their mind. Thank you. And as far as talking to the neighbor, it's not up to the neighbor, and that it's us. It's our property. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to allow both lawyers just one final word, if I might. So I'm going to ask Mr. Rabinovitch to that one comment that you've got, and then Mr. Longo.
Minor more clarifications. I wasn't allowed into the meeting at the beginning, so I'm not sure what Mr. Longo said. I didn't hear anything he said, so I'm not sure what he did say. But I do know that Mr. Longo would have had the same agenda that I received, which set out exactly what the proposal was by staff. So we had ample opportunity to prepare for today's hearing. So I don't understand why a deferral is needed by him or more time is needed. I, was able to prepare for today's meeting, and I don't see why he couldn't prepare for today's meeting. And not sure what, based on what I'm hearing from council, what he can bring to the meeting in 3 days.
Thank you. And what a perfect segue to Mr. Longo, the last word.
Sir, quite frankly, when I saw the word path, I did not understand it to be the path that Mr. Rabinovitch showed on his site plan. I thought it was just recasting the stone pathway that's tucked right into the edge of the road allowance that is shown on the staff report. Staff have conceded to you. What they've put in front of you is a request for more than what I had asked for. That is news to me, and I'm asking for the deferral so that I can properly consult with my client, and address that issue of the path.
Okay. All right, kill this.
Councillor Edwards, I hope that in the 30 days, if this deferral is granted, I will be able to get an understanding with the municipality such that perhaps things might be different 30 days from now. I take your advice. Please deal with us. Don't deal with the neighbor. It's our property. I've listened to that and I'm quite prepared to do it. But please allow us the opportunity to address brief staff comments that only came out late Friday that say this can be done at little cost. And I'd like to address that. And I'd now like to address what appears to be the elephant in the room, which is this path that this application wasn't even addressing and I wasn't even aware of. So please allow us the opportunity the opportunity to discuss it with the client and come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
I understand, just final point. I understand there may not be a supplemental staff report, and I'll address that at the time when this comes back. But please allow for fairness for me to be able to address this new issue that's come up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Councillor Nishikawa, have you got any further comment different?
Yes,
or?
thank you. I'm asking, Mr. Chair, if you can ask the question, don't read the resolution, ask the question if committee agrees to the deferral. Just that simple question. Does the committee agree with the deferral?
Thank you for that. Okay, I will ask, I suppose, a show of hands. Do I have a nodding of heads, if you will? Is the appetite here for a deferral? I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we're going to defer this. That's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, council members.
Okay, and I can't speak to a time when it would come back. I guess that's to be determined. Sorry? Okay, so yeah, so I guess that's what we should be doing. Would we then want this to come back in 30 days? Again, nodding of heads, here we go. Okay, so deferred for 30 days. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both for your presentations. Appreciate your time. Okay, so I'm going to call now on our Director of Public Works, Ken Becking, items 5A, 5B. 5A is a report on the request to formally recognize Millstream Bridge, Bala. Ken, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report, I think, is fairly straightforward. The district proceeded with rehabilitation of the bridge, which included putting up some signs that referred to the bridge as the Bala Creek Bridge. I gather that some of the residents were upset by that because they had understood the name was differently. The research that we've done to date, and I have to give some thanks to our clerk, because she was able to find a plan that actually referred to it as the mill stream. And that's ample evidence as far as I'm concerned. So the recommendation is that you request the district to formally amend the name of the bridge to reflect the local wishes and the documented evidence.
Good, thank you very much. Is there any comments from committee? Okay, good. Seeing none, I have a resolution here moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Council to request the District of Muskoka to formally recognize the structure over the mill stream in Bala as the Millstream Bridge. All those in favor? Good, thank you. Okay, the second item from Public Works is a report on the Township Hall siding. Ken, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year in 2020, Council approved funds for the replacement of the siding outside the council chambers. Unfortunately, the materials were not delivered before the end of the fiscal year. and have since been received by the contractor. We made a formal arrangement with the contractor to do the work. He ordered the materials. The materials didn't come in until this year. Unfortunately, by error, the funds were not carried forward into the current fiscal year. Nonetheless, I'm staffer of the view that there was an agreement and an obligation to proceed with the works. Contractor has acted in good faith and carried that out. So I believe there's an obligation on the municipality to do likewise. I have been able to identify savings within the department's other capital works that will more than adequately cover off the additional funds. So I'm asking for committee's approval to proceed.
Good, thank you, sir. Any comments, committee? Okay, I have a resolution here moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Council that in accordance with paragraph 5B of C-FS-01 budget guiding policy, the unbudgeted project to replace the siding on Township Hall in the amount of $18,000 be approved, and that the project be funded from savings to be accrued from the Portage Street Dock Replacement Project. All those in favor? Good, thank you. It's unanimous. I want to make if I might, just a sidebar comment here. I am noticing throughout our agendas today and tomorrow, well, I guess today, that I'm seeing a lot of references to taking monies from somewhere else, reallocation of funding. I find it particularly interesting that the Portage Street Dock we put aside for 2 years because we had one quote of $1 million, and now it's down to a manageable amount given that time and further scrutiny. I noticed it in a fire truck. I noticed it in a few other things, and I'm just wondering if there could not be some sort of a sidebar, but a miscellaneous account where it just seems that we're taking money from one place and putting it in another. I think it's great that we have approved this. But I just think it's strange that we take it from one project and give it to another. So I'm not so sure if that's just a financial, piece that we can look at separately. Perhaps Mark could speak to that. But anyway, just thank you for hearing me on that. I wonder if I could speak to Mark. Where's Mark? Right there. Mark, would you please? Mark Donaldson, Director of Finance.
Sure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And good morning, committee members. So when we passed the updated finance guiding or budget guiding policy last year, the intent was to ensure that council was apprised of all, particularly on the capital side, all investments that were being made. So the budget specifies specific projects where we're making changes to that. Staff felt it was incumbent to come back and just make sure that committee was and council was aware of those changes, and that they were duly authorizing those. So the references you're seeing in the report are just in accordance with that policy, so that committee and council are fully aware that the projects that are being tendered and proceeding with are those that have come through for appropriate approval that are outside of staff's delegated authority.
Good, thank you. I'm going to ask the CAO to speak to that as well.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And just to add to Mr. Donaldson's comments, I think the other thing that's important here is it's a transparency piece, but it's also letting council know that we're operating within the budget parameters that you approved. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. I have an item here, item 6B. It's a report from the Land and Agreements Coordinator regarding an application, a license agreement, Windermere Golf and Country Club Rule 3-2-096. So we have a report. Okay, go ahead.
An application was received from the Windermere Golf and Country Club for a number of encroachments of golf fairways, tees, and other features that currently exist. Another encroachment was starting to be constructed, and it came to our attention. So this is as a result of that. And so staff are recommending that the existing encroachments be permitted with the exception of the newly started encroachment, and that they need to put that back into its natural state at their own cost. And that's staff's recommendations.
Thank you. Presuming you've all read the report, is there any comments, any thoughts? Anyone? Councillor Hayes, oh, there you go. Councillor Hayes, go ahead, and then Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Through you, I read something on this bylaw that I had not seen on any of the other bylaws for encroachments, and that is that the subject, that if the subject original road allowances are required for future use by the township, said encroachments must be removed at no cost to the township. And I think this is something that we should be adding to all of our encroachments, just verifying and solidifying the fact that this is township land, it is public land, and should we ever have the need to use it, you're going to have to move your encroachment off of it. So I commend staff for putting this in, because I believe this will give us a stronger position in the future.
Okay, I'll let Cheryl Mortimer, our clerk, speak.
Thank you. The application, we're just formalizing that in the resolution, so it's very clear to the applicants. This language is always in the license agreement documents, that they must remove them at the end of the term and put it back to the natural state at their cost, unless we renew an application. But however, that's standard practice.
Good, thank you, Cheryl. Councillor Roberts, and then the mayor.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I'm just following up on Councillor Hayes's comments. I see in the as part of the conditions that they would survey the road allowance. I would like to have both sides of that road allowance surveyed, so the full road allowance, because I've heard from constituents that the encroachment falls off into their properties across the townships. I don't think it would be wrong of us to ask for the whole road allowance to be surveyed at the cost of the applicant. And I ask, Chair, that you solicit committee's support or non-support for this proposal that I've made.
Well, thank you, sir. That's interesting, because I don't have any reference to survey within the resolution itself. So it's more general in nature. So, but thank you for that. And within the policy, yes. So it's included in there. Councillor Roberts?
It's included for the full survey on both sides? It's included in, I see survey is mentioned, but does it include both sides of the?
I'm not sure. I'll speak to, I'll let Cheryl speak to that, because I'm not sure we can survey it.
Okay, thank you.
I'll have to clarify the specific language, but I believe that they are supposed to survey the whole of the road allowance, but I will confirm that if you can give me a moment.
So the mayor, while Cheryl's looking into that, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Through you, I guess, to staff. I see multiple encroachments, and if I'm trying to picture the map in my mind here, 18, 17, 16, it looks like probably the 15th hole, if I'm not mistaken, which is a par 3, and maybe the T block of the 16th hole seem to be the encroachments. And I guess the question is, are there multiple encroachments from multiple different features? And are they spread out? You know, the one $600 fee seems fine, but you know, if it looks like we're also encroaching on in between lot 30, concession 9 and concession 8, and then there's other encroachments on the other. I'm wondering if there should be multiple fees, or depending on how we divide and or split those encroachments. it's a bit of an atypical situation in this particular case, I think. So I'm just trying to understand that to the clerk.
Okay, I might be able to share some light with that. You don't have the benefit of the resolution in front of you. I can share that it does recommend to council that approval be given for a license agreement for, and this is very general, then for the encroachments of golf fairways, tees and other features on the original road allowances lying between, so a number of them, and between lots 30 and 31, concession 8, subject to the following conditions: that no further development be carried out on the original road allowances, that the initial construction of a T-deck feature be removed from the original road allowance and be put back to its natural state at no cost, and subject to the approval of the Director of Public Works, that if the subject original road allowances are required for future use by the township, said encroachments must be removed at no cost to the township, and that once all conditions have been fulfilled, the bylaw will be presented to council at a future meeting to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the license agreement. So I don't want to use the words general in nature, but it seems to be all encompassing and all inclusive. Does that answer your question, Mayor?
No, and sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. I guess the question is, the resolution is included in our agenda package, the recommendation. So thank you for that. But to the clerk specifically, can we divide the areas where the encroachments are? Do they be separated or not? I mean, I guess there's one hole, but are there two different sides? Does it make sense to offer a couple of them? If on this property, on the entire other side of the golf course, they encroached on another road allowance, we would certainly be offering, I'm sure, 2 encroachment fees. So I guess I asked your question on that, or does one really capture this because it's really just down this one concession?
Okay, Cheryl, you.
Okay. So I've confirmed in the policy that they are to survey the whole of the road allowance. So in response to Councillor Roberts' question, with regard to the fee, it's $600 for whatever encroachment it is. It's we've had many many license agreements, and we confirmed the fees in the policy a few years ago. So if it's a 5-foot encroachment or a 20-foot encroachment, it's $600.
Councillor Edwards?
Yes, thank you. And that, I know the area, and that I believe it's the 13th hole, right from the T and that right down, and then comes back, and then the 15th, it would be the tee off area there, and if it's just that one road allowance, and that would be the fee. If there was another one on another road allowance somewhere else, there'd be another fee for it. So I think it's just the one area that they're actually encroaching on at this point, and that they cleared.
Do you want to speak again?
The application, we received one application for all of the encroachments, and the encroachments are on 2 road allowances that connect. If you look at your staff report, the map clearly shows that it's 2 road allowances that connect together.
Any other comment? No.
Sorry, I don't know.
Okay.
The
mayor has a last word.
Well, I guess just a supplemental, and I appreciate the clerk's comment that it's an encroachment of 2 feet or an encroachment of 5 feet. It's a singular encroachment. In this particular case, we have multiple encroachments, plural, especially encroachments on 2 separate road allowances. I think we need to double check in the policy that there might be 2 fees applicable. And I'll just leave it at that. At this particular point, we can determine this when it comes back to council final, but I would just ask that question, that we dig into the policy specifically, and if there's an ability for encroachments, plural, then there might be 2 fees. I'll leave it.
Okay, so I'm seeing a nodding here, so we'll certainly take that under advisement as it relates to moving it on to council next month, should it pass. I'm going to read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved, the General Finance Committee recommended Township Council that approval be given for a license agreement for the encroachments of golf fairways, tees, and other features on the original road allowances lying between concessions 8 and 9, lot 30, Windermere, and between lots 30 and 31, concession 8, Windermere. Windermere Golf and Country Club, Roll 3-2-096, in accordance with the Township Policy C-LS-07, subject to the following conditions: that no further development be carried out on the original road allowances, that the second point, that the initial construction of a T-deck feature be removed from the original road allowance and be put back to its natural state at no cost to the township and subject to the approval of the Director of Public Works. That if the subject original road allowances are required for future use by the township, said encroachments must be removed at no cost to the township. And finally, that once all conditions have been fulfilled, a bylaw will be presented to council at a future meeting to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the license agreement. All those in favor? Call the question. Good, thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you, committee. Sorry? It's good. Okay, item 6C is a report from, again, perhaps Cheryl, update on the Township Policy C-GG-13 Township Council Policy and Administrative Procedure Development, and Township Policy C-GG-16 Township Council and Committee Report Development. So is that going to be Cheryl? Cheryl Hollis, thank you.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for considering our report today. When council approved the strategic plan some months ago, staff became, in the spirit of that strategic plan, wanted to move forward with modernizing, reviewing and updating our policies. And we also chose at that time to look at how we present those policies and also how we present our reports to council. So we have created some templates that we would appreciate your feedback on that modernize our approach to these reports and also are inclusive of requirements of the AODA. So that's in essence what I have to say. I'm happy to take your questions.
Good, thank you, Cheryl. In the efforts of continuous improvement, thank you for bringing these items forward. I'm going to call on Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you, first of all, I commend this this effort, and wanted to ask if this is perhaps the appropriate spot to include the concept of using plain language. So I don't know if that could be part of the, I'm going to say sections 1A, B, C, D, where we're talking about definitions and responsibilities, etc. Could we just include a line that talks to the notion of using plain language in all of our different reports? So there is, to add to that, and I'd be happy to share it with you. I'm trying to find it right now, Cheryl. There is a policy in the US, there is a definition of what plain language is. And I think if we could incorporate it here, it would maybe start us going through all of our different reports. So I guess the question is back to staff, is this the appropriate spot for that kind of a concept? I think it is, but.
Good, thank you. What do the others think? Any thoughts on that? Councillor Roberts?
Yes, I'm fully supportive of plain language. I know in the corporate world or the business world, we say write something that my mother will understand. And on a particular application that I get an echo. Susan, Glenn. There's an echo. Anyways, okay, good. That's perfect. So on this, I've had calls this week on a planning application is coming up, and the public are reading this and they're totally blown away with the complexity. And what we really need to strive to is something that our constituents can quickly understand. So I'm very supportive of plain language. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards?
I would support that as well. It should be in language that we don't have to hire a lawyer to read it to us to understand it. So it's as simple as possible is the best way to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mazan, once again.
Thank you. And just to add, the definition from the Plain Language Federation is to use wording, structure, and design are so clear that the intended audience can easily find what they need, understand what they find, and use that information. So again, I would be happy to share what I have with staff to help incorporate perhaps the appropriate language. And again, I'm just asking, I think this is the right starting place for this, and was just wanting to kind of get that alignment from staff as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Bridgman?
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. I just, when Councillor Edwards spoke, it occurred to me that he forgot to ask that if there's anything in metric, please make it imperial too, so that we can understand it properly.
Good, thank you. I am going to look to staff on this because we do have a report. I don't want to diminish that requirement, certainly Councillor Mazan, and do though think it might well require some considerable thought. And so I'm just going to, I see Cheryl Hollis has her hand up, so I'm going to let her speak to that. Thank you.
It is a component of the AODA. That is one of the criteria that staff is required to consider under that legislation. So we felt that a lot of that was covered off through that, and there will be training forthcoming to all staff members around the AODA. It's not just language, there's numerous other parameters around making documents accessible that would apply to the general population as well. And as part of this process, we will be embarking on that training. But we're certainly happy to amend the report and the policy if that's the wish of committee.
Thank you very, very much for that, Cheryl. I'm going to call on the CAO, Derek.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So if I understand the councillor's comment, I believe that Councillor Mazan is wanting to ensure that there's something in the policy that sort of speaks to, I think, the efforts that staff have been trying to achieve over the last couple of years in terms of when we write reports to make them as clear and as concise as possible. So I have no concern with amending the policy to address it from that perspective, if that's in fact Councillor Mazan's point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, I guess I'm surprised that it needs to be stated that we need to keep things simple. We don't need a department of keeping things simple. I would have assumed that everybody is going to keep it as plain and simple as they can. The only other comment I would make is a lot of the language that you read nowadays, especially in this, has evolved over time through court challenge. You know, words matter, and how you define things and describe things is often the basis of a challenge in court. So while I think it's an honorable cause to try to keep the thing simple and easy to read, you can't throw some stuff out for the sake of speed reading when the actual meaning has evolved from some challenge or some interpretation that's been in the past, and we put ourselves at risk when we abandon it. That's my only comment.
Good, thank you. I couldn't have said that well, actually. You're right, words do matter. And I think what I'm hearing here, certainly and within the room, is that we would add to our policy sensitivity piece to what we've just discussed. And so that will be taken under advisement. I will read this resolution. Yeah, we can, I'll actually add a line here, a couple of words that will say as amended, which will then take into account the comments that were heard today by you. Okay, so I'm going to read this resolution moved by Mayor Harding, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that the amendments to Township Policy CDGG-13 and CGG-16 as outlined in the staff report entitled Township Policy C-GG-13 and C-GG-16 amendments and dated May 12th, 21 be approved as amended. And further, that staff be authorized to proceed with the Township Policy Review Plan as outlined in the staff report entitled Township Policy GG-13 and C-GG-16 amendments and dated May 12th, 2021 be approved again as amended. All those in favor? Good, thank you. Carried. Thank you, Cheryl, for that. I'm going to go to item 6D, which is our CAO, District of Muskoka Services, on a very interesting report that he's got for us to consider. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Unmute. And good morning, everybody. So you'll recall at our last meeting that committee passed a resolution respecting retaining a consultant to provide us with some advice as it relates to the review of district services. So today's report contains a terms of reference to guide that consultant. So the report outlines or summarizes the approach, and staff are seeking committee's consensus that you concur with that approach. Thank you.
Short and sweet. So I'm knowing that everyone has read the report and it's a subject near and dear to many of us. I would ask committee for any thoughts or concerns, questions. There's Councillor Hayes. See you. Go ahead.
Yes, through you. In the where it asks for minimal consultation, I would feel more comfortable if minimal consultation included all of council and all of senior management team. I don't feel that you're going to get enough well-rounded input if you don't include all of those people.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Now I'm going to look to the CAO if you'll blend that piece into Councillor Hayes' comment.
Mr. Chairman, if
You're on mute, Derek.
my apologies again. The phantom muter is hitting me as well. If that's the desire of committee, staff can amend the consultation section of the terms of reference as outlined by Councillor Hayes. Just know that that may impact the budget that is outlined in the report if we go down that path. Thank you.
It's what's going on.
Glenn, you're on mute.
There's a gremlin in here.
Glenn, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Harding. And then Councillor.
Thank you. And I appreciate Councillor Hayes' comment or whatever. I think the idea is we're trying to, and if you read the consultation, we're trying to gain understanding, strengths, and weaknesses of the current fiscal service level relationship. So I think, you know, no disrespect, I think some counselors have a better handle on that than other counselors. Some people don't. There might be a perception of a service level relationship, and I get that. I think there are certain senior management and senior people within our staff. Our Director of Public Works obviously interacts with the district on a regular basis. Our Development and Sustainable Services Director certainly does. Our fire chief may or may not in certain areas. So I certainly go down the senior staff level. I'm just, I acknowledge Mr. Hammond's comment that are we just repeating the same thing? We're looking for consultation to say, hey, here's some things that we can change. So I do worry about a budget because if you go from an interview of 5 people to an interview of 15 people, 20, it certainly does enhance that. So I'd like to know what that cost is, first of all.
Okay. Because unfortunately we can't speak to that today in terms of the cost. Councillor Hayes.
Yes, through you. It may be that not all of the councillors wish to speak, and it may not be that all of the senior management team wish to speak. But I think that anybody that does wish to speak, perhaps we could get a count and see how many people might have information that might be pertinent to the consultation.
Good, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa, then Bridgman, and then I'll summarize.
Thank you. I don't require to be consulted at this time, and I'm looking to this report that comes back to identify, and I believe that I'm going to say me, and I've been a district council for a few years, don't have a full understanding. So I'm just looking for that list of all of the services and all of the things to do before I comment, and I would like to get that report. That report should not have my comments because I wouldn't be commenting on information that I have knowledge to. So I would suggest that the way that the resolution is set at this time is correct. I don't think that there's any need for, I believe council will have the opportunity, or committee will have the opportunity to comment on the report when it comes back. This is not going to exclude our ability to dialogue on this any further. So I think we should leave it as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well said. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. Actually, I was just going to get some input from our district councillors, so I think I just got it. So I'm fine with where we sit with this.
Okay, good. Thank you. And I just want to say as a final note, I think that, you know, this has been sort of a bellwether of our recent council and our new staff members. I think Derek Hammond, our CEO, working in conjunction with the mayor. I think we've really moved the needle on this, and I'm excited to see this report and experience what is coming. And so in this regard, I think we're all should reach behind ourselves and give ourselves a little pat on the back for pushing this item forward, because it needs to be done, and our people, those that voted for us, asked for it. So we're accommodating that. I'm going to read this resolution moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Whereas General Finance Committee Resolution number GFC-4-14/04/21 authorized engagement of a consulting firm to develop a township strategy respecting a view of District of Muskoka services. Now therefore be it resolved that the terms of reference attached as Appendix 2 to the staff report entitled District of Muskoka Services dated May 12th, 2021 be used to guide the consultant in that assignment. All those in favor? Good, thank you very much to all. Okay, so essentially 10:30, we'll call a break. Perhaps we can be back here at 10:45. Okay, 15 minutes. Thank you. There we go. Good morning, committee. We're back. I see we have a new person here. Councillor Kelly, is that you?
I'm running with an old video today.
Wow, look at you.
Oh, an old Super 8.
Well, congratulations on that. Okay, we're awaiting a few folks here. Mayor Harding. Should we go ahead? There he is. And of course, we have Mark, who is speaking to the first report. So, okay, committee, we have a full staff here now. Item 6E, we're going to call on Mark Donaldson to report on a financial update of March 31. So, Mark, go ahead. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chair. So before you is a summary report of our Q1 financial results to March 31st. Current year-to-date actuals in the summary table in the report are compared against full year budget and Q1 from last year, just for comparative purposes. Interim tax billings are not yet reflected in this report as they are captured as a single estimate of consolidated taxes owing based on last year's final billing for interim purposes. Once the final billings are prepared, then there's a breakdown between district, township, and school boards based on those approved budgets, and these will be recorded in future updates. So just to be clear on that. The report indicates that total revenues received to the end of Q1 are 6% of the total budget, with 94% remaining. But if you exclude the tax revenues, that increases to actually to 22% received to March 31st against the 2021 budget. So that's for non-tax revenue, other, and transfers from reserves. The current year revenues are ahead of last year. This is due to increased penalties and interest as a result of some higher outstanding balances. Higher non-tax revenues driven mainly by building and planning activities as compared to Q1 of 2020, which are offset partially by interest revenues, which are down from last year because of lower interest rates and reduced income from the arenas because of their closure due to public health measures related to the pandemic. We have brought into this report 1/4 of the accrued or 1/4 of the approved COVID restart, safe restart grants that were approved in the budget. So 1/4 of that amount has been brought in as revenue in the period. Full revenue details by department are included in Appendix 1 to the report. Just going to the expense side, expenses to the end of March 31st are $3,575,944, which represents 20.6% of the total annual operating budget expenses. Included in the Q1 expenses are 1/4 of the annual contributions to reserves that were approved in the budget. The expenses are listed by expense type in the report, which shows that most lines are less than 25% of the annual budget. So we are tracking well on that basis. One item of note I will flag is the COVID expenses. It's showing that that is 52% utilized to the end of Q1. Classifications of these costs related to COVID are being reviewed by staff. It is likely that some of these costs were included on other lines and have been coded related to COVID in this report, but more work is needed, more analysis is needed just to confirm where we're at on that. The full operating expense details by operating department are included in Appendix 2 to the report as well, so a different cut of the expenses. Just a quick word on capital. So there's been relatively little capital activity in Q1 as the budget wasn't approved until the end of February. Additional spending details and comparisons to budgets, along with reserve details related to those activities, will come at my next update for Q2. And as of Q1, staff are really not forecasting any material variances from budget at this time. Updated forecast projections to year end will be included in future fiscal updates. So that's my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mark, for that update. Appreciate it. Sounds like we're in good shape. I'm going to call on Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chair Zavix. Just to clarify, Mr. Donaldson, the COVID costs are, I'm not sure whether I heard that you think they're in two different places. They've been coded twice, or we're just going to do a realignment of some of those costs to other areas, perhaps. I was a little unclear on that.
Mark?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. And in response to the question, so I believe that in the budget, they may have been included on other lines and not classified as COVID expenses, but when the actuals have come through, we've coded them as COVID. So just wanting to do some more work on realigning that.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you to Mr. Donaldson, I just want to say great job. Nice piece of work. Informative, easy to read. You know, it's a nice story. It's a great way to tell the story, but it's also a good story. So thank you for that.
Good. Well deserved. Thank you. Any other comments from our committee? No, I see none. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mark. We'll take that as information and appreciate your time on that one. 6F is a report from yourself, sir, as it relates to an amendment to an insurance RFP resolution I have in front of me. So go ahead, Mark.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. And just quickly, so last June, committee passed a resolution that directed staff to issue a request for proposal for the insurance program to be issued for 2021. And staff are requesting an extension of the timeline of that resolution to permit the application for renewal to go forward for the coming year, with the intent to issue an RFP prior to the expiration of the upcoming renewal that will be effective July 2021. So the direction that was given to staff for RFP for the current renewal, we're asking for an extension to next year.
Okay, committee, thoughts on that? Councillor Roberts, no, you good? Okay, good, thank you. Okay, good, I'm going to read a resolution moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved, the General Finance Committee recommend to Council that an RFP for the Township's general insurance program released prior to the expiry of the most recent renewal of the contract with PFL Canada. All those in favor? That's good. It's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we've got item 6G, a report from Mark on the procurement bylaw amendment. Go ahead, Mark, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, Chair. And this is really a housekeeping matter. So the current procurement bylaw has two accompanying schedules, which were brought over into a concurrent policy, CCAO 13, around 15 years ago. Subsequent to that, the policy was updated on 3 occasions, but there were no changes made to the bylaw schedules. So they are currently not in sync. So what we've asked for is proposed bylaw amendment, which brings the changes that were included in the policy into the bylaw schedule. So then they are then aligned. And then further, as there's redundancy between the schedules to the bylaw and the policy, staff are recommending rescinding the policy so that it makes the bylaw the primary source or the sole source, pun intended, of procurement guidance for township staff. I'd also note that the committee that a full review of the township procurement bylaw and procedures will be coming forward in the future. I'm happy to take any questions.
Continuous improvement. What? That's really strange. Okay, good. Thank you. Continuous improvement again rears its head. So thank you for that. Great progress. Councillor Nishikawa, and then I'll read a resolution.
Thank you. Just throwing in a jab that as we look forward and just discussions that in the past have or other councils have brought up the fact that we try to shop locally And I hope that that will be a continuous discussion when the new bylaw gets drafted. But I think that we need to really start emphasizing that stronger, and whatever language needs to be wrapped around that, we figure it out. Thanks.
Thank you. Good words. Any other committee thoughts, comments? Okay, I'm going to read this resolution moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Oh, sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
That's okay. You could have continued to read. I guess I'll go to Councillor Nishikawa's perspective. And maybe I wouldn't mind staff's comment. I agree 100% to procure locally if possible. But if it's going to cost the taxpayers 20% or 30% more, then I'm probably not in favor of that. I can understand a 5% surcharge potentially. So I guess I'd love to try and understand and what is local. Is local Muskoka Lakes? Is Muskoka a Bracebridge? Is it Gravenhurst? I don't understand that. So maybe just some further direction coming down from staff. And again, I don't mind paying a small premium, but at the end of the day, we also need our contractors here to potentially stand up. And I certainly wouldn't be in favor of saying, well, it's local, so we have to pay a 50% premium, and they know that just by putting in a bid, they get the contract. So open to suggestions from staff.
Point well taken. And Mark did refer to a further and a more elaborate, inclusive, fulsome, if you will, plan coming forward. So I think in terms of that, Mark, is that your intent to consider the mayor's comments and Councillor Nishikawa's comments?
Thank you, Chair. And absolutely, we're open to considering any direction that's provided by committee. And I think that there is a balance that we can certainly strive to achieve, where there's that fiscal responsibility and competitiveness with that of local vendors and suppliers who can provide us with good quality service.
Good, thank you. Then I think you've got a good sense of this committee's feeling on that issue. I see the mayor still has his hand up. Okay, good, we're done. Oh, the CAO would like to make a comment.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I would remark to committee that in fact, we do that now. We've recently had some examples of vehicle tenders where there was a low bid from further afield in the province. And there was a local provider that had a slightly higher upfront cost, but and that's the vendor that we went with in lieu of having to go further afield to get any maintenance done or further work, right? Which would have essentially in the longer run probably have costed more. So we are sensitive to that now, but certainly to the extent that we can frame it in the policy, I think we should look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. And certainly concur. So with that, I'm going to read a resolution moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved, the General Finance Committee recommended Council that bylaw 2004-161 be amended in order to reflect previous council endorsed changes to policy C-CAO-13 and Schedule A of the bylaw, and that policy C-CAO-13 be repealed. All those in favor? Good. Councillor Hayes, you're frozen. Oh, there you go. Thank you. It's carried. Thank you, committee. So we have our, moving on to item 7A. Thank you, Mark, for your presentations. Item 7A will have a report from Fire Chief Morrell on firefighter rate of pay amendment. There he is. Welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Morning.
Through you, Chair. Good morning, Council. The report that sits in front of you asks that bylaw 2021-07 has the effect to amend Section 4A, and Schedule A of this bylaw be given 3 readings. The bylaw number is 2016-125. This report is a summary of the proposed changes to Section 4A, which essentially is part of our bylaw today This report also responds to direction as outlined in report from July 15th, 2020, respecting amending this bylaw and authorizing the annual firefighter pay increases following council approval of the operating budget. This amendment would have the effect to change the hourly rates of pay for all volunteer firefighters that are set at March 1st every year. It would remove the duplicate nature of us returning to council and asking for permission to increase that pay and tie that to that process to the draft bylaw as attached as Appendix 3. This has been prepared, and the effect of which would be to revise the wording of Section 4A and link this rate of pay with the approval of the operating budget by council. The proposed amendment would also delete the repetitive language of Section 4A currently found in Schedule A of the bylaw. I'll stand for questions at this time, Chair.
Good, thank you, sir. And any questions of committee, Chief? No? Good, seeing none. Oh, there he is, Councillor Roberts, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just didn't want to be first again. So anyways, thanks. Very good report, Chief. I was looking a little bit at the honorarium piece of your report. And we know that the honorarium is paid to staff and volunteer officers for in their supervisory role. And I was looking at the amounts and I thought, boy, this certainly seems to be a very small amount for the significant contribution, specifically in the area of the volunteers that they perform on behalf of the township. And I'm wondering if we should really look at this this honorary process to see how we can really reward our supervisors with more money, more rewards in any way for because they are the first line responders that we have in the case of emergency, and they're the people that at an accident scene or a fire or take charge, and everyone is really happy to see them. So I'm just going to turn it over to you to see if if something else could be done in the next budget. I'm not talking right now, but we should look at this and how we can really put a better brand on the volunteer firefighters and our staff firefighters. Thank you.
Chief Morrell, I'd let you comment on that if you.
Through you, Chair, to the committee, I appreciate the comments made by the councillor. Absolutely, I wholeheartedly agree. The method of compensation for our firefighters today is varied, but it is consistent with our partners around us here in the District of Muskoka. And as recently as February 2019, I note that there was a compensation chart that was put out to all of the district fire chiefs from a local fire chief who was evaluating compensation. And since that time, we've ensured here locally that we're meeting a lot of those same compensatory benefits for our members. For committees' information, we give our firefighters VFIS coverage, insurance coverage today. We also do pay for their complete their complete driver's license renewal, and that includes the medical check, which actually has the benefit of helping us understand that they are medically fit to perform their duties. Our rate of pay is in the average. It's on par with the other fire departments in the region. The honorarium piece is an anomaly to Muskoka Lakes. It also finds itself in the Bracebridge Fire Department, and we note that during their master fire plan process, they're looking at that as well. The honorarium piece is tricky from my perspective. The honorarium piece does a couple things that sometimes is hard to measure. One, it may have the unintended consequence of rewarding the unengaged officer, whereby the engaged officer, the person that is giving you a lot of time, is set at a certain rate. What I've seen a lot of municipalities do is they set a different rate of pay for the officers that is more in line with the amount of responsibility that they are supposed to exhibit at the fire scene. So to answer the councillor's question, we are looking at this through the master fire plan process. I would agree that 2 rates of pay, one for officers, one for firefighters, would be a better system over the honorarium system that is in place today. And perhaps we will bring a report to council that highlights that benefit.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. And I might acknowledge too, Councillor Roberts, over the months, I've heard you repeatedly bring this topic up, and so please continue to do so. And I think under advisement to the chief, as it relates to the master plan, the fire master plan, we can continue to look at this and scrutinize how we can best acknowledge our frontline first responders. Thank you. I'm going to call on the mayor, and then I'm going to read this resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I agree with Councillor Roberts' comments. You know, do we do it in an honorarium? Do we do it in rates of base pay, whatever? It might be interesting at one point just to do an analysis of an average district chief based on the hours they put in, what kind of compensation is going towards them when you add their hourly remuneration as well as the honorarium, just so we get a general idea. I think that's probably appropriate, and you know, we need to look at the entire totality of compensation. So thank you for that. Look forward to that in the future.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to read this resolution moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommended Township Council that bylaw 2021-07, the effect of which is to amend section 4A and schedule A of bylaw 2016-125 be given 3 readings. All those in favor? Good. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you, Chief. Okay, item 7B, I guess we'll accept the minutes of the Public Library Board submitted for March 9th meeting into the public record. Thank you for that and all your hard work through these COVID times. 7C is there are minutes of the Recreation Parks, Trails and Facilities Master Plan Steering Committee. Their first, I believe their initial meeting dated April 23rd. Item 7C, and then of course item D, which is a consideration of a motion to formalize the adoption of the Recreation Parks, Trails and Facilities Master Plan Steering Committee terms of reference as presented at the April 14th council meeting. So I might just roll these into C and D into one general discussion or one very specific discussion. I'm not sure who, either Director Becking or Chair Mazan of that committee would like to speak to 7C and D, but I would give you the floor.
Thank you, and through you, I think all the information is there, so certainly if there's any questions, we're here to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. Committee, there's the mayor. Go ahead, Mr. Harding.
Thank you very much. Just a comment. I appreciate the task at hand that this committee is embarking upon. And my understanding, though obviously I have not been in the meetings from others present, a job well done. And Chair Mazan, to yourself, thank you for taking on this task and leading the charge forward. Look forward to the committee's work as it moves forward. But thank you, and thank you to the entire committee. It is going to be great results at the end of this and tough work going forward, but appreciate the efforts.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, good. I'm going to read this resolution moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the Recreation Parks, Trails and Facilities Master Plan Steering Committee terms of reference as presented at the April 14th, 2021 council meeting be adopted. All those in favor? Okay, good. Thank you for that. To the mayor's point, item 7E, a verbal update from Councillor Nishikawa, who's the chair of our Parks and Trails Committee, very specifically regarding the Torrance Barrens Special Committee. It's spring, it's May, and would welcome your words, Committee Member Nishikawa.
Thank you. Just briefly, we continue to have our monthly meetings. They're going very well. As I mentioned before, the direction of MECP, and they have put in a formal application, is my understanding, is that in fact to redesignate the Torrance Barrens from a conservation reserve to a provincial park. One of the issues that I will bring attention to our committee is that a future request will probably be coming forward to this group to highlight the importance to this township of our dark sky reserve. While MECP has an understanding of the conservation and the parks situation, I don't, or others feel that perhaps there is not an acknowledgement of the importance of that dark sky reserve. And I will say the impact that I have seen over more than 20 years of bringing a unique specialty to the area, especially when we do have those events that happen usually in August, and where those that have some of the finest equipment do share with many others that happen to show up at these events, that we actually continue to respect and acknowledge this special dark sky reserve in our township. That's all I have to share. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And I guess to your point, one presupposes that as this committee does its work, you, as our representative, and certainly Director of Public Works Becking, as you are working together, would bring some items forward to this committee in terms of your thoughts, wants, needs, desires, concerns, as it relates to that going forward. So thank you for that. Appreciate your update. Item 8A is a report from Corey Moore, our Communication Economic Development Specialist, regarding licensed cannabis retail locations. We requested a report at our March 10th, 2021 General Finance Committee meeting. So Corey, there you are, sir. You have the floor.
Great, thank you, Chair Zavitz. As Chair Zavitz mentioned, at the March General Finance Committee, staff were asked to bring back information report on licensed retail cannabis locations. As committee is aware, in January 2019, the council opted out of allowing retail locations in the township. If a municipality decides to opt out, they are able to opt in at a later date if desired. But once you opt in, you are locked in and are unable to opt out at a future time. So with that, if committee does wish to consider or revisit that decision, the report highlights the necessary steps or process in place to do so. With that, Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask committee now. Having read the report and understood it and been involved from the very beginning on this topic, I'm wondering what thoughts you might have. So Councillor Bridgman, I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. Thank you, Mr. Moore, for this. It was a great report. I guess my continued problem with how this is set up by the province is we have absolutely no ability to decide where these retail places are going to be put. And so I think where I still sit is online works for a lot of people. Rosso has a store now, Bracebridge has a store. That's my concern, is that we don't have the ability to decide where these are. So not that I'm completely closed-minded about it. I'm happy to listen to everybody else, but I just thought I'd raise that.
Good, and thank you very much for that. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I've been watching these locations definitely in Bracebridge, and I understand that the Huntsville has many retail stores in their community. Gravenhurst does. We have one in Rossall, which is Seguin Township, and the actual placement, when I'm looking, like the one that I'm thinking of in Bracebridge is right on Main Street. You drive down, you see no abnormal collection of people there. It's just a retail store. There's another one going in where Food Basics, there's another cannabis retail store going in there. So I don't think the location, it'll be supply and demand. There are not a lot of places I know in Port Carling, but maybe in Bala that you can house this establishment. But I don't see an issue. It was passed by both the provincial and federal governments. We have no say on the rules. All we're being asked to do is to say that to opt in and say we allow retail stores. I've done a lot of research in this area, and within Ward B, I am aware of constituents that are regular customers for the medical CBD. I'm also aware that doctors in Bracebridge are prescribing CBD for their patients. So there is a demand. There's definitely a need. I don't see the downside on this. These are respectful retailers. So I don't know. I might be in a field by myself, but I'm saying the whole province have these stores, and our residents are obtaining what they need in another location. So it could be a lost leader for us. I.e., rather than going to Bracebridge, I'll go into Port Carling or Bala and use the grocery stores and that. No, by the way, I'll drop by and get my cannabis that I require. So, anyways, those are my thoughts on it. And,
Good, thank you for that. That'll prompt discussion. Obviously, I see Councillor Nishikawa, then Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Roberts, I would never leave you out in a field by your lonesome. Anyhow, the reality is that we are the only municipality in the district of Muskoka that has not opted in at this point. I know that there are 2 new facilities in Gravenhurst. I think that we would, it's very concerning that we in fact would not approve this. What I am concerned about, or I would like to have a better understanding, and I'm going to be looking at our CAO actually, because then he could figure out who the best people would be able to get this information. I'm just concerned a little bit when we get our municipal world editions and things, that there's some comments being made from other municipalities about their concerns and that have opted in. I'd like a little bit better understanding of what those concerns are. I think I recently read one from Simcoe, for instance, and I think that they're more about the logistics than just whether you opt in or out. At this point, I think that we should be opting in. And the reality is, that people have to go through quite an application process with the government to allow this to happen. It would not, in my mind, make any sense that this would not be on our main streets. For instance, in might even see one pop up in Windermere, you never know, but it probably would be next to the post office. That type of idea, like people need to be front and center to actually get walk-in traffic. So I would like that, but I just like a little bit understanding of what the other concerns from other municipalities that we may or may not have picked up on. Thank you.
Okay, before we move on to Councillor Kelly, I would draw your attention to, as you all know, as having had the agenda for days now, there's correspondence from other townships and municipalities as it relates to a number of items, and there are a few here on the cannabis licensing and enforcement. I think it's the city of Port Colborne. I couldn't help but notice their slogan is breathe it in. So I thought that was particularly, they voted for it, but they're concerned about the bylaw, about the enforcement piece from the province. So have a look at that. Councillor Kelly, and then Councillor Mazan, then Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, and through you. I guess a couple of points. First of all, I'm old enough that I never thought I'd hear the day when a councillor like Councillor Roberts suggested cannabis be a lost leader. That's an interesting approach to retailing. I guess my fundamental question is, we covered the ground on this. We surveyed, we discussed and kicked it around. We got input from staff, and we decided that it wasn't really something that we were particularly pressed to do. And I can tell you, I still don't understand the press, the pressure. The calls I get about pot are around potholes, not with the need for it in the township. So I really don't know what's changed since we last discussed this. I certainly am not getting, and please, I'm not inviting any, but I'm not getting a whole lot of correspondence from people who are saying we really need this, would complete us. I putting aside all issues, it is legal. It's legal like a milk store or whatever else. You want to have an exotic dancing bar is legal too. But it's just something we've looked at, decided we didn't want. And I don't frankly feel any particular pressure from anybody other than around the table here to change my mind. So clearly somebody else is getting more push or more encouragement to make this change than I'm getting, but I'm not feeling or hearing anything that compels me to go back on the decision we made 8 months ago or whatever it was.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, sir. And Councillor Mazan?
Thank you, and through you. I'd like to echo those comments. When this came up again, it actually took us back. I think this was one of the first major decisions that we had to make as a new council. And since that time, and even through all of our economic development meetings, it hasn't come up, to me anyways. So I'm certainly not opposed to revisiting it or understanding if we wanted to opt back in. But I'd like to support what Councillor Nishikawa is saying as well. And it is interesting in our municipal world today. Today's email to us, they talk about that Simcoe, and I think it was actually more focused on the commercial side versus the retail side. But what it does do is it highlights that there's people who have gone before us and people who are living in it. And I wouldn't mind understanding any of the key learnings that those jurisdictions have had before, I'm not feeling the pressure. I haven't had anybody asking me before we would just kind of launch back into it wholeheartedly as a township. So I think if we were to want to continue to explore this, I would be open to it. I might recommend that it comes back then through economic development and maybe our committee, and maybe there is some time spent understanding that. Those would be my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Hayes and Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, through you. When we looked at this in 2019, the rules for the stores were unknown at that time. And we didn't want to get into anything that wasn't fully disclosed. But now we've seen that there are stores popping up everywhere, that they are not intrusive. And if you look back at the survey that we took in 2019, over 70% of the people said that they would support having cannabis retail in our area. So I think it's time to rethink this, and I will echo Councillor Roberts and Councillor Nishikawa. I think we could go cautiously forward, check out anything that was in the municipal that people are finding difficult to deal with. Make those corrections and actually catch up with the other townships, because we seem to be.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, and then Councillor Roberts, I'll give you a last word.
Thank you. We opted out. So if we opt in now, there's no benefit to the town and that, because of the fact that the province won't give us anything for it, where if we had have opted in before. I'd hate to see Port Carling, every second store now is a real estate, and every second store being a cannabis store. And somebody mentioned there'd be one in Windermere, one in Raymond, and all these other little spots. I don't think it's necessary. We can't control it. That's why I was concerned before, and I'm still concerned. And that because there's really no benefit to it, and I still would be opposed to it unless the province come up and said, okay, we'll give you a cut, and that. But to opt in now, and that I'm still not for it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Roberts, and then Mayor Harding.
Thank you. So the reason you're not receiving letters is a lot of people that are users, and we're talking the real strong users know that they can get the product at another supplier, better quality at a better price. But the ones that are buying, they do it in a sheepish manner, because when you're going into downtown Bracebridge to purchase it, there's cameras on either side of the store, and you have to go around the corner. You place your order, you go around the corner, and you pick it up. People are not going to be writing their counselors demanding a cannabis store. They'll just go and get it in Bracebridge or in Windermere, or not Windermere, Rosso. So you're not going to get a flood. When I studied the survey very closely back, I actually copied out every comment and looked at it. And Councillor Hayes was absolutely right. There were 70%. But when I read the comments, 70% of those people were users of cannabis. So they're going to vote. They were the other 54% were totally against cannabis at all. So I'm just saying you're not going to get a flood. I just say this is no different than a candy store. And you can get candies there, but this is no different. And it's just a retail store. And why are we putting special restrictions on an illegal operation? Why don't we just open up and get on to more important matters? So those are my final words this time.
Thank you, Mayor Harding.
Thank you very much. And I guess I echo, as I've heard, I'm not opposed necessarily at this particular point, but what I also haven't heard is the economic benefit, the increase into adding this. We do know, Councilman Zan, I think, made a comment of some of the other municipalities their experience and what's gone on in the first year. I think we can also look to our neighboring municipalities, increased police presence, what's gone on in and around. Is there increased costs associated with that? And I think I appreciate the fact that maybe let's just get our Economic Development Committee to chime in on this, make a recommendation to this committee to move it forward or not. And because the Economic Development Committee is really the business community, there's people reflected there. And, maybe we sell them the Port Carling locks and we have the first drive-through cannabis store by boat. No idea what we want to do or not, but maybe there's a creative approach here. I'm not sure if there's a lineup of people who want to take over retail stores in Port Carling. My one benefit, and I would look at it, if a retail store was going to be open 365 days a year, or at least 12 months a year, I think that is a benefit to this town. And that's why I'd really like to have our Economic Development Committee have a look at that. So it's an information report today, but I think the chair of Economic Development has got his hand up, and maybe he wants to, I'm going to pass the ball over to him.
Well, thank you. But before he does, I must say, sitting on the Economic Development Committee, and I will share, I don't know what this has to do with economic development at all. Quite frankly, the government of Ontario and the federal government has said it's legal. So I don't know, at this point in time, I'm not even sure why we're having this deep and heavy discussion. If it comes back to economic development, I can tell you, we're not going to know what to do with it. We haven't got a clue as in terms of what we actually have as vehicles or any kind of power to specify a drive-through here or this or that. Well, we either want it in our township or we don't. And if we don't, we just move on to the next topic. If we want it, we vote. We don't have a vote today. So anyway, I'm going to let Councillor Kelly speak to that.
Thank you, and through you. And this is the economic development argument perspective, and I don't have the data that I would like to have, and we will get it. But one thing we know about this township is that there are a limited number of spaces for retail operations to take place. There's a fixed number of retail stores in Port Carling and Bala and Windermere. I don't know what the number is, but it's fixed. One of the things you can see in Port Carling, and we occasionally make the joke about it being a town of real estate offices. Well, the fact of the matter is real estate is a very lucrative business. It generates margins unlike anything, like hawking t-shirts or selling beach towels. And that means that real estate can essentially come in and take over because they can pay the freight. They can find a way to pay the big money and take the space. That's why there are, I don't know however many there are in Port Carling. So one of the impacts we need to think about, and I don't know the answer to this, but I've wondered and I worry, and we can probably find this out elsewhere, is the retailing of cannabis equally lucrative such that at the end of the day, it's going to squeeze out all the traditional retail that we've come to expect in our town? And that is an economic development consideration, an economic development issue. Once all of the good retail is gone, there's nobody left to sell the stuff that traditionally expect to find in our retail. So I'd like to know that before we comment on the economic development thing. We can bring that to ECDev. We can ask perhaps other, I don't know what kind of disclosure there is on financial performance, but we can ask other municipalities, has there been kind of a squeeze out of low margin traditional retail in favor of new upstart cannabis? Because that's something we got to think about whether we want or not. It's not a matter of whether we like the product or anything. Is this what we want in our retail world, And I realize a lot of our stuff is seasonal, but it's what we expect in a tourist driven second home environment.
Good. Okay, thank you. And unless Councilor Mazan, unless you have a different notion on this, we'll move on. Go ahead.
So thank you, and through you. I'm not sure if it really is different, other than if we were going to be asking staff to come back with a more comprehensive report to include the economic development side. I'm also interested in understanding any kind of best practices or key learnings from other areas as it relates to enforcement and or other items as well. So I put that back to staff if you're going to be coming back with a report. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. And so just to wrap this up, if I might. So obviously our communication economic development specialist, Corey Moore, who drafted the report, sits on our economic development committee. I'm going to look to a show of heads or hands here in terms of who at this meeting would just want to push it to economic development for next month, and we can continue the discussion there. If I might, I would just look to you as to who would like to have it go to economic development. So that's myself, 1, 2, Councillor Bridgman, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harding. There you go. So it's 5 and 5. Sorry, Frank's not here. Oh, okay. I was afraid of that. So, okay. Well, I don't have a motion to read. So what'll happen is, I suppose, what we'll ask is to move this over to economic development for a month. Have a look at it. And I won't ask for a more inclusive report because I think it is a great report, and there's all kinds of information out in the world about this whole piece. So thank you for that, committee. Oh, I'm going to let CAO have a.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I think, to be fair to Mr. Moore, staff would appreciate a bit of direction as to what it is that you're expecting from the Economic Development Committee, as well as what you're expecting staff to present to the Economic Development Committee. Are you referring the question of, do we want to, what is the committee's view on or recommendation to this committee with respect to opting in? And what are the associated issues that other municipalities are experiencing that have opted in? And some kind of recommendation coming back to General and Finance? Is that the direction you're providing to Mr. Moore?
And thank you for that, CAO. In fact, what I was going to simply suggest, I think as I did, that it would go, we would push this over to Economic Development, the report as is. And there is a public constituency to that Economic Development Committee. Hear what some others have to say outside of our committee, and then go from there. There doesn't seem to be the sense of urgency. And I want to stress, there seems to be an awful lot of information about this, but it seems premature to make a hard and fast call to a vote to yay, nay. So given that, I'll let Councillor Kelly have the last word as the Chair of Economic Development, then we'll move on.
Thank you. And through you, just to answer the CAO, I don't think staff needs to do anything with what's already been done yet, except get it on the agenda for ECDev next month. And then the Economic Development Committee can focus exclusively on the economic development issues around it. And probably there will be some more work that flows from there.
Good, thank you. Okay, committee, given that's what we're going to do, we're going to move to 8B, a report from the Communication Economic Development Specialist regarding the Heritage Building Plaque Program. Again, this was requested at the April 14, 2021 General Finance Committee meeting. Corey, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, committee is familiar with the presentation from Ms. Daglish regarding the Heritage Building Plaque Program. In particular, there was two asks of the municipality in that presentation, one being assistance with information collection and the other from a funding perspective. Through working with departments at the Township, staff were able to find out that through MFIPA in particularly, the Township's unable to provide the information requested just due to the fact that we're not able to release information for reasons outside of the original kind of collection of that information itself. So with that, we were able to connect with a few local organizations, the museum, the library, that expressed interest in helping with the research and collection of that information using some of the old documents, historical documents that they have, as well as exploring other opportunities such as the Land Registry or Archives of Ontario. Additionally, in those conversations, specifically as it pertains to the museum, they would be willing to help with the funding or the coordination of the funding as well for the program. And as such, we could enter into an agreement with them to funnel the funding to them to help purchase the plaques themselves once ready to install. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good, thank you. Committee, okay, Councillor Edwards and then Councillor Nishikawa.
Yes, I notice on page 116, and this is for the chair, the consent of the original property owners. That could be hard when the building's 100 years old. They could be well dead. Should it not be the present owner?
Yeah, in terms of the resolution that is in front of us, obviously it contemplates that report, but it does not speak to that very specifically. I suppose that language could be amended to and or present owner or current owner or something else? Do we believe that needs to be amended? Let's ask Corey. Corey, go ahead.
Sorry, I just lost everyone. Nope, there, I'm back. So that portion of the report speaks to, under AMFIPA, the only way we would be able to release that information is with consent from the original homeowners. Given that that probably isn't realistic, we kind of recommended that the information be collected with help from the museum and library archive.
Okay, Councilor Edwards, there you go. Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I'm not sure. Well, it's not a question. I have a concern that this started at a committee level, a committee that was approved by council, that we are now directing. It feels to me, anyhow, that we are directing leadership, whatever else you want to, whatever the correct term would be. But with all due respect to the museum, I believe that this was a committee level discussion, that in fact, I was hoping that this was going to continue on throughout our whole township. My concern is that if we are now going to include another entity, such as the museum, that we're going to fund the dollars through the museum, it gets lost. We will not be able to, for instance, highly unlikely that Walker's Point will be dealt with in the same manner as, for instance, Port Carling. Just because we're talking about now involving another entity. And again, I thought this started at our committee level, and I didn't realize that we were going to now remove responsibility, ownership to another group. That's what it appears to me when the discussion comes to the museum. My concern is, again, we have a community grant that goes to the museum, and I really want to separate this whole idea that, in fact, another level of funding is going to the museum, and it, in 5 years, what is that identified as that other additional level of funding? Because we've seen that come back at us in other ways, that all of a sudden, you know, now we approved this one-time funding for 20,000, and then it shows up, as I say, down the road, another level of council, and it's, well, you did it before. I just have concerns with the way the direction that this has gone, and I would hope that it could stay within the committee level.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bridgman, then Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. Just a clarification, if I could, Mr. Moore, and I may have missed this when you said it. Ms. Daglish is on board with this idea. I just want to make sure that she's part of this. You've spoken with her?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, I have spoken with Ms. Daglish, who understands and is supportive of this direction. I think when staff heard the presentation, we viewed this more as a partnership opportunity with these community volunteers, and as such have kind of framed the program in that way, more so of a pilot project. I know Ms. Daglish had identified starting in Port Carling, but I think there's a desire to expand the program further throughout other communities in the municipality. From the funding perspective, I know through our operating grant and the annual budget, we do provide the museum with a funding source there. But with that, this year, we are looking to develop an MOU regarding that funding as well. And I think we can make sure to include in that MOU the guidelines as to which the funds are used for as well. So.
Good, thank you for that optics view. Councillor Hayes and Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you, and through you. Yes, this did start at a heritage meeting, but it is for historical plaques, similar to the program that they run out of one of our southern municipalities. I believe when Corey contacted the municipality, they have a historical group that runs lead on their program. So perhaps in the future, it would move from being supported by the museum and would move over to a Township of Muskoka Lakes Historical Society. That would be great. In the meantime, I guess regardless of the semantics, if we could get this going, that would be something that I would look forward to.
Good, thank you very much. Councillor Kelly, then Councillor Mazan, and we'll all this.
Okay, thank you. Through you, just a couple of quick comments. My understanding is really the change is brought about by the fact that we can't be releasing information or going to any expense to dig it up. I don't think there's going to be a big transfer of funds or a big cost borne by the museum. Having spoken to Sue Daglish about this, I think a lot of the information that they're looking for is almost anecdotal. And so I think we'll be able to find it and not go to any terrific expense. And I can tell you that I also know that Mrs. Daglish is recruiting help from among the community to get involved and work with her to develop all of this. So I think we're going to find that I think the cost budget was relatively modest. Is not going to run into money. I think it's going to take a little more time than we'd planned, but I don't think it's going to cost a lot of money.
Right, thank you. I believe it's $600 in the report.
Yeah.
Councillor Mazan, then we'll call the motion.
Thank you, and through you, I would like to support the Heritage Committee. I would like to support this initiative. Like was just noted, the cost is minimal, and I think the opportunity is a good one. When we talk about things like history and character, which is embedded in our strategic plan, this to me seems like a very easy win. I would like to draw attention or ask the question to the last part of the staff report, which talks about the Port Carling Historical Walking Tour. It is managed in Bala, it would seem, and that possibly there's an opportunity for that to happen as well. So I personally would like to at least understand if that's could be embedded maybe in the strategic plan that's through the museum. I don't know how this is best governed, and or if we have that included maybe in our CIP, or if this somehow could be linked together. The idea of these walking tours are great now that we are getting better at using things like QR codes. To me, this is just an obvious, easy win for fairly low cost and could be easily taken to some of the other communities like Windermere, where there is a real sense of history. So I don't know how I do that now. I'd like to support Mrs. Daglish's project, and I would also like to support the other initiative that staff has brought forward in that second part of this report.
Okay, good, thank you. And perhaps through your master plan that you're chairing, perhaps that walking tours is a part of that. I mean, exercise, recreation, one wonders. This is mainly a funding piece, just to give approval to that. So for what that's worth, Councillor Hayes.
Yes, through you, just so for information purposes, the walking tour that's given in Port Carling is a privately run walking tour, not through the museum.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, could I have a supplemental? Sorry, just for clarity, I wasn't suggesting, I think it's done privately, you're correct. I don't know if that organization could maybe do something in Port Carling and or others. And that's what I was just trying to, I would like to support the concept of this idea and asking that staff continue to find a way to make something like this happen, given it's brought forward. And it seems to have had some history and success in Bala, quite frankly. So I think staff has their hand up. I'll turn myself off.
That's fine. We'll let Corey speak to that.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Zavitz. And I think Councillor Mazan actually brought up probably the most appropriate option moving forward, just in the development of our community improvement plans. We'll certainly be discussing kind of the pedestrian connectivity of the downtowns. And I think we can definitely make note of this walking tour as a possible option to include in that plan moving forward. Additionally, the museum is working on their strategic plan too. So through involvement and discussions there, we can kind of mention it as well. So I think staff have noted it for sure as a possibility moving forward.
Okay, good. Thank you, Corey, for that, with that assurance. And I'm going to read this motion moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Mayor Harding. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that the Heritage Building Plaque Program Partnership Project outlined as option 1 in the staff report entitled Heritage Building Plaque Program and dated May 12, 2021 be approved. And that council authorize the use of proceeds from the Heritage and Attainable Housing Advisory Committee 2021 operating budget to fund the partnership project, and that a funding agreement between the township and the Muskoka Lakes Museum be prepared and the final terms of said agreement be to the satisfaction of the township's solicitor. And finally, that the mayor and director of development services and environmental sustainability be authorized to sign said agreement with the Muskoka Lakes Museum. All those in favor? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, Cheryl. Good, and thank you for that. Item 8C are the minutes of the Economic Development and Grants Committee dated March 31st. We'll take them into the public record unless Chair Kelly would like to have a comment on that. No? Okay, good. We're good. Thank you so much. Item 9, unfinished business. I would ask committee at this point, is there any unfinished business to contemplate or consider? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Item 10, new business. I'll call on our mayor, and then Alan Edwards, and then Ruth Nishikawa, our municipality of Muskoka updates, please. Thank you. Mayor Hardy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Engineering and Public Works. A lot of our meeting was spent discussing the water main break in Bracebridge. We had an independent consultant. The one thing that they really recommended was nothing really went wrong, but there was some increased communication protocols in dealing with the pandemic or the emergency that they're recommending going forward, and just basically best practices. Until you really go through an emergency, you don't see all the little holes that might be there. Reconstruct your road in Georgian Bay, curbside collection. We're doing some route mapping. And I will suggest right now, I mentioned last time we had an update that we have awarded a new contract for recycling with Waste Connections. Outside of Waste Connections, it's gone to GFL. Waste Connections is still picking up the recycling. GFL is going to be managing it. Your constituents may right now be seeing some service interruptions. We had problems last year with the pandemic.
Okay, you're frozen, Mayor.
Again this spring. So I'm asking everyone just to be careful, be aware of what's going on. If we do miss a collection, it's supposed to be collected the next day. The district will be updating their website, and we're trying to do an even better job of communicating that we would probably know in the morning that a route's going to be missed, that they may be able to update it immediately that day. So looking at some other protocols, but right now our waste collection, and conceivably for the next few months and through this season right now is still going to be problematic. Trying to solve that problem at the district, but it is an ongoing issue. That's really anything that's major that I can really suggest right now. I'll leave it at that. The only other meeting that I'll comment on is last Friday. We had a meeting. I was not in attendance, but I've had a debrief from Chair Klink, and Mr. Hammond was there, and that was regarding OPP and detachment boards. And though there is a provision for potentially more than one board, I think the implication or the idea of that was specifically First Nations may have some specifically different policing requests and requirements, so that they may have their own board. But predominantly right now through the District of Muskoka, we're going to be submitting one proposal. There was a date of June 7th. that it was supposed to originally be met. But I think it was quite clear through the Solicitor General's office that that date will not be met, and the proposals would be coming back sometime probably in the fall through the district as far as composure of who's on it. Is it one from each municipality, lower tier, so on and so forth. And I think the other thing that should be noted, the detachment board will not be directing the police. They provide input. They'll provide ideas. We've got these sort of problems. How would we? It's just sort of a two-way dialogue, but it is not specific direction. And then the other thing that is noted, the detachment boards will not have any input over the OPP billing model. So that still will remain there. So I think that's my overview right now.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. So now I have some questions here. So Councillor Roberts has a question.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Mayor Harding, I apologize if I was sent an email on this and didn't catch it, but the status pickup on Sunday afternoons for the Islanders, is that still in place this year?
That's still in place for this coming summer. Yes, it is.
Okay, and it's been well advertised to the community, I assume.
I will believe it has been. Same as last year.
I haven't seen anything. I just wondered.
So I believe it's July and August that we'll be doing that, not the 2 months ahead of time.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. My question would be to the mayor concerning the no parking on Highway 169 in front of Party Lake. While the installation of the signs for the first few weeks worked very well, this past weekend and previous weekend were very difficult. I had a number of phone calls. I guess everybody likes to call me because I can pop my head out the window and take a look. It's very distressing. You know, we did call the police. The first time that I was called. I'm also suggesting others call the police, but in fact, does the district have any ability with the new bylaw officer in place to actually start ticketing, or where is this going? Are we just putting signs up with actually no action behind them? And I'm not sure if this discussion, if you could bring this discussion forward to your committee, but certainly I think those that live in the area are very concerned. And in fact, one of the groups of people was a car rally that showed up with over 20 cars who all chose to park in front of the no parking sign. And in fact, I've actually followed a couple of sites that this is happening on a regular basis throughout Ontario. But with no understanding or direction at all from the community of what we can do to remedy the situation.
I will certainly follow back up with our engineering, public works and bylaw to figure out the best way to enforce those no parking signs. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Edwards, you go right ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. At the Community and Planning Services, there was a launch of the staff report and lens of the climate change initiatives update, which is verbal. Ontario Works, they're signing a agreement with the province for $2,222,800. That is meets with the chair and that is for the Ontario Works and that program. They handle it for the province. And what's the other one? In child services, there was a child care services agreement they're signing, and it's for $39,360. The other one was just, and then there was, the social services in that program, whereas the province announced additional funding in amount of $1,172,769 for social services relief fund. And that they were looking into that and signing it. And the other information, it was just subdivisions which are in Huntsville again, and one in Bracebridge. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Our health services meeting was held on April 22nd. $120 million for education for PSWs was announced by the province. And as I may have shared with council members earlier, there will be grants available to pay for the education of the PSWs. It's interesting because there's glitches in the program that the government has set up. And in fact, as far as the district situation is concerned, we are better off to hire people untrained and then pay for their education. So for instance, if we hired an individual that is pursuing becoming a PSW for the Pines, for example, we would be better off to give them a grant through our municipal services than the way that the province has set this up right now. And so that we would be moving forward with some of those initiatives. I'm going to leave out a lot of the details because there's a lot of details in there. But in fact, as well, it was also commented that the District of Muskoka has been a fair and hiring fair employment employer, I should say, as far as wages in this sector. So we're meeting our requirements in that way. There is a new committee that is being established from the province that is called, I'll just give you the initials, MAOT, which is essentially another health teams initiative, much like Health Links. There's just been discussion about how that's all going to roll out, and again, it's mostly meant to have all the information gathered in one place, that an individual doesn't have to keep repeating their story to every different location that they have to go with. There is a concern about the duplication in services, though, with the health links. And of course, some of that is not paid for by the province. Some of it is based on an initiative that our district had done over the years. So we're just looking for clarity on that. I would say the more exciting discussion was around our paramedics. They have been, there's been an increase of over 2.5 million for over 3 years. We are hiring new staff members, and all of this really comes under community paramedic in what those services that they're providing. So as at today, if, for instance, you were taken by ambulance to one of our hospitals, the paramedics would follow up once you're released. So for instance, if you happen to live in McVitie Place in Bracebridge, for instance, like which is the seniors complex, the paramedics may drop in and just see how you're doing and follow up in that way, because it's a bigger program that paramedics will be given more opportunities and options for the public health. So it's very exciting, I would say. And also that program was being run out of the Bracebridge facility. They're now going to be moving the program to Gravenhurst to give them more room. But mostly I wanted to assure everyone that it is a service available in Muskoka Lakes. Again, let's support that. And I'll say the paramedics are there for us. And I've heard concerns in the past that the stations aren't in the right locations, but in fact, all of the numbers prove that they are. The other thing I would just mention again is the Pines, the financial update on that, for COVID costs and things were discussed. And also the fact that the Pines has been operating without an administrator for some time. Our Director Barrett has stepped in place, but we have now hired two trying to think of what the correct management term would be, but administrators for both Fairburn and the Pines. There was a question of whether that position could be held by one individual, but in fact, it's required under the provincial requirements require you to have one per home. They found two excellent candidates, and while Fairburn is not fully, that we don't require that individual at Fairburn at the moment, we need to grab hold of this one to move forward with the development of Fairburn. Overall, we're short-staffed throughout in their long-term care homes, and look forward to having to complement those staffing needs. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any questions of any of those district council representatives? Good, seeing none. I'll move on to item 10B, which is a community events update. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? This is that opportunity. Okay. Oh, Councilor Nishikawa, go ahead.
Well, only because she is a very important part of our community. Our postmistress is retiring. And so if anyone has an opportunity in the community to drop a line off in Bala saying, you know, thanks for your services, it would be greatly appreciated.
Good, thank you. Well said. Anyone else? Okay, good. So item 10C is correspondence listed in your agenda packages received and as a matter of public record. Is there any of those 21 items that you'd like to discuss here and now? Anyone? Okay, good, thank you. Okay, there is no closed session, so we'll move to adjourn at 12:08. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 12:08 p.m. and the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held on Wednesday, June 16th, 2021 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from the council chambers, municipal office in Port Carling, Ontario. All those in favor? Good, thank you. We'll see you in an hour.